What's up everyone? Bitcoin. The thing that everybody loves or hates, but no one really understands. Well, it's quadrupled in the last year alone. It's worth $700 billion currently. Bitcoin has the potential to 10x until it reaches the value of gold. And this is because Bitcoin may be a store of value that would replace gold. Now, what does that mean? What is a store of value and what are the advantages that Bitcoin has over gold as a store of value? Today, we're going to talk about what a store of value is, the advantages that Bitcoin has over gold, and some of the risks that surround Bitcoin and why maybe it isn't a replacement for gold after all. So let's get into it. So what is a store of value? Well, it's an asset, currency, or commodity, a thing that retains its value without depreciating. It's essentially an asset that can be saved today, and in 10 years, 100 years, ideally for the rest of eternity, it will be worth the same amount of value or be worth even more. It should be able to be saved, retrieved, and exchanged in the future without depreciating in value. So let's think of a few things that might not be a good store of value. Let's say milk, for example. Milk is a terrible store of value. Let's say you want to store $3 in the form of milk. Well, you'd exchange your $3 for milk, you'd put it in your fridge, but a month later, the milk would have gone rancid. You could exchange it for $3, but I don't think anyone would want to exchange it for that amount of money. In fact, you probably have to pay someone to take that milk from you for more than $3. Gold and other forms of precious metals have historically been stores of value because it's valued as a jewelry or a expensive thing by a lot of people. Whether you're in ancient China or Europe, gold is gold. It's the gold standard. It's the most expensive and most bombastic and gaudy thing that people can think of. In fact, the US dollar used to be a gold standard. And what that means is that until 1971, you could exchange a US dollar to gold at any time. Since 1971, however, the US dollar is just a US dollar. It's backed by the power of the US government. It's something called a fiat currency, which means it's a currency that's not backed by a thing. Gold is often considered a safe haven, so that means that when there are times of peril, when there's a global pandemic, when there's a nuclear apocalypse, or anything the year 2021 and on will throw at us, gold is considered a safe form of value. You can store your value in gold, and more likely than not, at least more so than any other thing, any other asset, you can probably exchange your gold for something. Now you might argue that maybe, I don't know, bottle caps or water is more useful in an apocalypse, but people like gold. So Bitcoin may replace gold as a safe haven form of stored value. And that is because, like gold, Bitcoin is finite in supply. Gold, you can only mine so many rocks on Earth to extract all of the gold on Earth. With the exception, of course, if you went to space and found a big asteroid made of gold, in that case, you're probably in trouble if you own a lot of gold. But Bitcoin is finite in supply. It's algorithmically, it's scientifically made such that you can't exceed more than 21 million Bitcoin. So that means that the value of Bitcoin, theoretically, would not depreciate over time. Unlike the US dollar, which inflates at around 2 to 3% every year, which means that if you had $1 today, it'll be worth 1 to 3% lower next year compared to today. Bitcoin, on the other hand, gold, and other forms of deflationary assets will not theoretically depreciate in value over time. The reasoning is that the US dollar or any other currencies are constantly being made, right? And there's no endpoint. You can create an infinite amount of USD if you wanted to. So that means that as time goes on, as there's more and more USD circling around, the value of everyone's USD will drop. In fact, some investors hold Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, which means is that it's a counter investment against the rise of USD. Famous investor and hedge fund managers Bill Miller, Stephen Druckenmiller have both said that they're investing in Bitcoin, and Druckenmiller has said that he's warmed up to Bitcoin as being a good form of stored value. MicroStrategy, a Virginia-based software company, has in fact converted some of its treasury, some of its cash that it stores in its bank accounts, into Bitcoin. And it's done very well. The value of its Bitcoin has probably doubled or tripled by now. They hold 71,079 Bitcoin as of February 2nd. So what are the advantages that Bitcoin has over gold? So let's do a hypothetical race, right? Let's say I need to transport 100 ounces of gold to you. And let's race that with the equivalent amount in Bitcoin. Well, first of all, I can only carry so much gold with me. Right? It's a physical thing, so I have to put it in my backpack or put it in a container somehow and take it with me. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is stored on the network, on the internet, or in the form of cold storage, which means it's a kind of USB stick that stores Bitcoin without a connection to the internet. So the size, of course, is a USB stick, and it can theoretically store millions and millions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin. Okay, so shipping costs. It costs $315 to ship 100 ounces of gold. Compare that with $8 to ship Bitcoin over the network. On the way to the airport or the boat, Bitcoin can be confiscated or stolen because, again, it's a physical thing. Bitcoin, on the other hand, cannot be intercepted while it's being transported. It's encrypted and hashed in such a way that it's impossible, well, theoretically impossible to crack. And then how long does it take to ship your 100 ounces of gold to you? Shipping time takes anywhere from 3 to 10 days if you're shipping across the world. Bitcoin can be transported in 10 minutes. It can be settled in 10 minutes. And then after I give the gold to you, you're storing it somewhere, right? It costs $415 to store 100 ounces of gold. The equivalent amount of Bitcoin, or any amount for that matter, can be stored either on the internet or in the form of a cold storage, as I mentioned, and those usually cost around 60 bucks. So I say all of that because we need a digital form of gold in today's age. We can't rely on a physical thing or an asset or a commodity to store our value. In the day and age where we can listen to anything, watch anything, any movie, any show we want to in a matter of seconds, it only makes sense if our safe haven asset is the same form of digital good. In fact, Cathie Wood, famous chief investment officer of ARK Invest, has said the same argument. Gold can be confiscated, it can be stolen because it's a thing. And there's a lot of issues with storing your value, a stored safe haven value in a physical object, because it's susceptible to any physical harm that you may bring upon it, like being stolen or being confiscated. So that's why I think Bitcoin can be a good replacement for gold as a store of value. But now let's talk about why Bitcoin is not potentially a good store of value. First of all, Bitcoin uses a hashing algorithm, a sort of protective measure called SHA-256. Essentially, it means that Bitcoin is kind of encrypted by a password. And that password is a digit that's 250 digits long, except the digits are not 0 to 9, it's 0 or 1. So with 256 digits and 2 possibilities for each digit, it's 2 to the power of 256 in terms of the possible arrangements for this password. Theoretically, if you have enough time, if you have enough compute power, if you use a quantum computer, for example, you might just be able to crack it. But at this point with our current technology, it will take a long time, and it's quite impossible. Second of all, in a disaster scenario, let's say a zombie apocalypse or a worldwide pandemic, let's say there's no electricity. In that case, then Bitcoin is kind of useless. You can't access your Bitcoin, and no one will want to take Bitcoin from you. But in those situations, you've probably got bigger issues. In that situation, I'd argue that maybe water or bottle caps or anything that's actually useful is more of a safe haven than gold. So that's it, everybody. That is a bit about Bitcoin, a bit about safe haven assets, a bit about store of value, and why I think that Bitcoin may be a replacement for gold. And it's not just me, there are sources below that argue the same thing, and as I mentioned, Cathie Wood of ARK Invest has said the same thing. So I would recommend you to keep an eye on Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin. Do your research, and if it's a thing that you'd like to invest in, take a look at it. But again, do your research, make sure that you know what you're doing, and maybe, just maybe, it'll be a good form of store of value. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you learned something in this video. Share this with someone who you might think that would enjoy this content or might learn something, and I'll see you in the next video.